You know, we sport bike riders, we're a pretty gullible bunch, and I can prove it. Just watch this.
I see you checking out that RS660 right there. You thinking about picking one up? Yeah, I was, but I was really thinking about getting the factory. Do you have any of those in stock? Unfortunately, we did just sell out of those, but we do have the Tuono 660 factory, which has all of the same features. It just has a handlebar and less fairings. But it doesn't look as cool. I think I'm just gonna get the base model RS660. You do realize that that bike costs more and doesn't have the Öhlins and stuff, right? Shut up and run my credit card.
It's no joke that AF1 Racing is currently sold out of RS660 factories, and I was standing in the room while one of the sales guys was explaining how the Tuono factory has all the pros of the RS, but with a naked bike look and a handlebar. Even still, I could tell the guy he was talking to just wanted the RS660 factory. It boggles my mind. Both bikes make 105 horsepower at 10,500 RPM. Both bikes make 50 foot-pounds of torque at 8,500 RPM. Both bikes have 43mm Öhlins Nix forks and an Öhlins STX rear shock. Both have Brembo 4-pot calipers on 320mm rotors. They even have the same seat height because the damn subframes are the same. The only major difference is a handlebar on the Tuono versus clip-ons on the RS, and a half fairing on the Tuono versus full fairings on the RS, which, spoiler alert, makes the Tuono 4 pounds lighter. Is that enough to make a difference? No, but the spec sheet warriors will care, and yet they still don't when they get to the dealership. Oh, but I forgot the biggest difference. The Tuono is $11,499 versus the RS660, which comes in at $13,999. That means you could get a fully spec'd out Tuono factory for less than the price of the base model RS660, and it's still not selling. What the actual is wrong with us? I think we all need therapy.
Now, for the next few minutes, I'm going to attempt to show you that this bike right here is one of the best bang for buck motorcycles you can spend your money on right now, and it is criminally underappreciated. However, this is my motorcycle, and I did buy it, but I was provided a steep discount by the folks at Aprilia, which means that you can consider this a sponsored video. They gave me that discount so that I could ride this as a part of the Creator GP series, where I'm racing 650 EB and Chase on 2 wheels, and you can win yourself some free prizes by entering codes like that one in the link down below. You can get yourself entered to win some prizes from Alpine Stars, Motivation, Quadlock, Cardo, a bunch of others. And all of that is wrapping up pretty soon, so you don't have a ton of time to get yourself entered to win. So yeah, that code right there, the link down below, get yourself entered to win some cool stuff. And let's go shake this thing down in the twisties.
I've spent more time on this motorcycle in the last 3 months than any other bike, and I can say without a doubt that this is one of the best handling bikes I've ever ridden. Once you start getting this thing on the side of the tire, once you start pushing it as hard as you possibly can, this thing really starts to shine. The way the power is delivered is so nice. It's so smooth, it's so linear, but it's got a really nice grunt right when you twist the throttle, kinda no matter where you are in the power band. Typically, I find once you get a parallel twin spun up, it kinda loses its bite. They're usually really nice in the mid-range with a pretty decent punch down low. And then up top, they're kinda like nobody's home. But believe it or not, this thing has a good solid rush of power at the very top of the power band. I typically rev this thing out a lot harder than I would most of my other motorcycles, with the exception of my CBR. And that's an inline 4 that makes all of its power well north of 10,000 RPM. And those of you guys who have watched the channel a lot, you're probably not used to seeing me ride like this on the street. But it's just something about this bike. It just makes you want to push a little bit harder, go just a little bit faster.
Now, if you take this thing to a racetrack, you really realize that this is a closeted BDSM enthusiast, because the harder you wring its neck, the more fun this thing has. Seriously, this thing is so capable of being pushed that it makes you a better rider. I am an aggressively mediocre motorcyclist, and yet every single time I take this thing to the racetrack, I feel like I'm getting faster, I feel like I'm looking cooler, and I'm like, you know what? I really could stand to buy another set of rear sets for this motorcycle. Maybe I do want to get a race tune for this thing. Wonder what it would take for me to get rid of the lights on this and turn it into a track bike. It really is kind of a gateway drug into track day riding, so if you're an impressionable human being, you may want to stay away from this thing because it's just going to create another addiction for you. Another thing that helps this bike out so much is how wide the handlebars are. It naturally puts you into this elbows out stance and turns your wrists into that screwdriver grip. It makes it so much easier to open your shoulders up and turn into a corner. It sounds silly, but this is my favorite handlebar setup I've ever experienced on any motorcycle, and I would take these handlebars and put them on every single one of my bikes if I could. Now, for most people on most racetracks, this has more than enough power to get you through the intermediate group. However, on a track like COTA, where we have a kilometer-long back straight and the track is huge, you do find yourself wanting for power a little bit. It does kind of suck to be going down the back straight and being at full throttle, full tuck, 15 seconds in, being like, yeah, that's 131, 132, 133, 132, 133. Admittedly, it's only a little over 20 seconds on a lap that takes me like 2 minutes and 50 something seconds to get around. So there's other places I could make up speed before I need more power, but it sucks to be going around a corner and get left in the dust by leader bikes. It's a bummer.
But let's say you want to ride this motorcycle within the bounds of polite society. Live up to the masquerade, if you will. This thing, it's pretty good. It's pretty good. It's not like the hardware on here is going to suddenly stop working. And I don't just say that because there are some motorcycles where when you start to ride them at normal human pace, they just don't work as well. They're designed to be pushed as hard as possible. And this thing, it's still comfortable. It's still fun around a corner. I do tend to find myself, if I have to be responsible, I have to take it out of individual mode. I have to turn down the throttle response. Otherwise, my brain just cannot slow down enough to actually, stay behind a van. The seat on here is comfortable enough for an all-day ride. The reach to the bars is nice. The way that the bike responds to inputs when it's not being pushed is predictable. It doesn't feel jerky. It doesn't feel like it's tugging at the leash. Again, assuming you take it out of individual mode. In individual mode, it's just like, why? Why are we going this slow? Come on, dude. Now, because this bike is so performance-oriented, everything below my butt cheeks on here is just dying. My toes are carrying a lot of weight. There's very tight angles between my knees and my ankles. It's an aggressive place to sit. If you were going to be a street rider on this thing, I could completely see putting a set of Rizoma's lowering pegs to buy yourself an extra half-inch. And it would be a lot more comfortable. I mean, who wouldn't want an extra half-inch, right?
That actually gives me a great opportunity to start talking about some of the stuff that bums me out on this bike. And first and foremost, we do have to talk about the suspension on here. Now, this suspension is a bit funny, and it's not terribly uncommon to see this with a lot of motorcycles out there. The front end is sprung for me, the rear end is sprung for Marc Marquez. That means that no matter what I do, I can't get the right setup for me. I think I understand why they've done that. It's a lot cheaper to get a single rear spring put onto a shock than it is to replace 2 springs in the front suspension on your motorcycle. So overspring the front end so you can accommodate for more riders. and leave the rear end a little bit more plush for those guys riding on the street. Next up, the cruise control on here is so annoying. Honestly, I would say it's one of the most annoying I've ever experienced on a bike. I'm sorry, folks at Aprilia, you gotta go back to that older cruise control setup where you actually had a dedicated button for it. This nonsense about reusing some of the same buttons on here, that's gotta go. Speaking of buttons, I do not like the way that you interact with the menus on this motorcycle. There's so much stuff buried in so many different layers of menus, and to get through and adjust all of the modes and stuff, it takes a long time. Mercifully, once you do it, it remembers it so you don't have to go back and redo it, but you really do have to read the manual to understand what everything is doing. Two rapid fire things to round this out with. First and foremost, parts are expensive for this motorcycle. That tailpiece right there is a $60 cheapo Chinese knockoff version of the previous generation's tailpiece. That's actually for the 25 and below. To get the actual real one, it's a couple $100 and they're not currently available, which is kind of a pain in the butt. There's plenty of aftermarket parts available for this motorcycle, and plenty of them that fit the old bikes will fit the new ones. However, it is worth pointing out that those are going to come at a premium because this is an Italian motorcycle. Lastly, looks. For me, this motorcycle is drop dead sexy. However, I understand for some of those who look at this bike and see the fairing stop here and think that the bike looks half finished. It used to have a belly pan, and I kind of wish that Aprilia would bring it back for this bike because it definitely does complete the bottom end of this motorcycle. But for me, between the fit and finish, the color choice, the metal flake, and the black paint, it's just hard to say this bike doesn't look drop dead gorgeous. Now, no conversation about the Tuono 660 factory here would be complete without talking about its place in the market, and I've ridden just about all the bikes that this is going head to head with. I have to compare this thing to both the 650-ish class and the middleweights, since in terms of power, features, and price, it sits in a weird middle ground between the two. When it comes to both the MT-07 and the GSX-8S, they make less power than the Tuono, have cheaper components and build quality, and while they have some trickle-down tech, they're not nearly as sophisticated as the Tuono is. Also, I mean, just look at these bikes. The Tuono is way prettier. They are both $2,000 cheaper though, so does that make up for it? Not in my mind, but let me know what you think down below. Then you have the CF Moto 800 NK. This is where things actually start to get interesting. Power-wise, they're comparable with the nod going to the Tuono. The suspension and build quality are worse on the NK, but the brakes are closer than Aprilia would want to admit. If you're looking for a fun street bike on a budget, the NK might be worth your time, seeing as it's over $2,000 cheaper. I've got a whole video coming out on this one, so stay tuned. Now let's look at some of the bigger competitors. I see this as competing primarily with the MT-09 and the Street Triple R. It loses when it comes to power and price, but it wins when it comes to tech and looks. I'm starting to sense a theme here. If we weren't looking at the Tuono factory, I'd stop there, but we are, and features-wise, it's a lot closer to the MT-09 SP and the Street Triple RS. Once again, it lacks the power of either bike, but this time it's cheaper, and in the case of both motorcycles, it has better or comparable hardware. For example, the Tuono is the only bike to my knowledge to come with full Öhlins south of $13,000. If I was only concerned about power and willing to spend a little bit of money to upgrade the bike later down the line, I'd buy the Triumph, but in almost every other case, the Tuono makes more sense in my opinion. Now, some of you will notice that I have not talked about reliability, nor have I talked about serviceability when it comes to this motorcycle. As far as working on it, it's no more or less of a pain in the ass than every other modern sport bike. I know a lot of people are really worried about an Aprilia because they don't have a dealership network or whatever. If you have one of these motorcycles and you have a question, just call AF1 here in Austin. They'll help you out. As far as reliability is concerned, I don't have enough miles on here to tell you. I have 1,266 miles on this motorcycle. However, I can tell you that more than half of those have occurred on a racetrack at Redline. This bike has lived a very, very difficult life in the last 3 or 4 months, and it still wakes up and rides with aplomb. Several of my friends in my riding group have Aprilia 660s that they've been riding for a long time, and they're just as bulletproof today as the day they bought them in some cases several years ago. What's more important to me is that this motorcycle, to me, is one of the best values you're going to get at this price point, and yet it's not more popular than it is.
Now I want to leave you with a parting thought. The base model RS660 is $2,250 cheaper than the RS660 factory. Do you really think that a company that is designed to make money is losing $2,250 on every single Tuono 660 factory they are selling? Or do you think it might be more likely that Aprilia realizes sport bike guys are gullible enough to pay an extra $2,000 for fairings?